Life will always bring you on a roller coaster ride. I'm navigating through each and every day and loving what is and what the future may hold. My past has given me amazing memories and untold stories, and at times feeling of worry and hardship, which I now see as part of my life journey. Remember, show up, and if you fail, that's okay. Tomorrow will bring a new day and new ideas. I've had the privilege to spend time and interview some amazing leaders over the years. As they share their stories of life and business, I find out what makes them the people they are. I'm honoured to share their stories with you.
On today's show we have Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. He is one of the leading executive educators, coaches and authors. He has been a pioneer in helping successful leaders achieve positive, lasting change in behaviour. His success is built upon a very practical, no-nonsense approach to leadership. His clients have included over 150 major CEOs, and he has written and edited 35 books, many of which have been bestsellers and award winners.
And Marshall Goldsmith, welcome to Breakthrough Brands.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We are delighted to have you. You're a household name in the business world in Ireland because of the wonderful books that you've written over how many years?
Well, I've got about, I think book number 41 is coming up.
Wow. And Patrick here has just published his first book, so you are ahead of me. So we'll try and make this as inspirational for anyone who wants to write a book. Marshall, you're a thought leader when it comes to business leadership. What made you get into it, and where did it all start for yourself?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I've had the privilege of working with some of the greatest iconic thinkers of our time. When I was very, very young, I was 28 years old, I met a man named Dr. Paul Hersey, who invented situational leadership with Ken Blanchard, probably the highest paid consultant in the world in our field at that time. And he got double booked. He was kind enough to let me follow him around. He got double booked. And then he said, I need help. Can you do what I do? I need you to work this day. I said, Paul, I don't know. He said, I need help. Can you do this? I said, I don't know. He said, I'll pay you $1,000 for one day if you can do this. I was making $15,000 for 1 year. That was 41 years ago. I was 28. You know what I said? Sign me up, coach. I did this program for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, who was incredibly pissed off when I showed up because it wasn't him. But I came in first place of all the speakers. So I said, this guy's great. Send Marshall again. Paul said, do you want to do this again? I said, Paul, you're paying me $1,000 a day. The other people are paying me $15,000 a year. I'll do this as many times as you want. That's how I got into business.
Do you think you fell into it?
Well, I love speaking and teaching. So for me, to be able to be a success with those people at that time, at that age, was almost impossible. And I think what happens in the world of speaking and teaching, people know you either love what you do or you don't. And if you love what you do, they can tell it. And if you don't love what you can do, they can tell it. So I've always loved it, and I still do.
Yeah, I think people can smell the fear. I think it's like in NLP. They say when you're talking to people, there's something that goes on in the back of someone's mind to know if you can trust this person and they are genuine about what they do. Would you believe that yourself?
I totally believe that. I don't think you can fool people for large amounts of time. I think intuitively people may not have high IQs, but they can sense a phony.
True.
Patrick here, Marshall. In some of your books, like Mojo and Triggers and Life Storming, there are themes that come up in different forms and manifestations again and again. And one of them is beliefs that you've just mentioned there. Mm-hmm. So how do our beliefs actually inform our behaviour and determine how things turn out for us in the short term and in the long term?
Well, they can be positive and negative. I talk about the beliefs of successful people, and we have a few beliefs that help make us successful, yet these same very beliefs can make it hard to change. For example, successful people believe, I have succeeded. I did this, I was a success. Then we fall into something called the superstition trap. I did this, I was a success, therefore this must have made me a success. Wrong. Everyone I coach is mega successful, and they're successful because they do many things right, and in spite of doing some things that are stupid. And I've never met anyone who was so wonderful we didn't have something on the in spite of list. Another belief that gets us into trouble is we believe, well, I can do it. Well, that's obviously associated with success. On the other hand, it leads to overcommitment. Successful people tend to chronically overcommit. I do myself. And we tend to always bite off more than we can chew because we keep thinking, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And we tend to be very unrealistic in our goals. And again, it makes it hard to admit when we make a mistake because successful people believe I will succeed. Well, the problem with that is it can be very hard to let go of what doesn't work. For example, in R&D for pharmaceutical companies, the item that scores last place in terms of 360 feedback is willing to let go of projects that won't work. Because these people, they have MDs, they have PhDs, they put 7 years of their soul into this project. They're really committed. They believe in themselves. It's hard to say it's not going to work.
Yeah. So these beliefs that are unhelpful, either because they hold us back on the one hand, or they make us...
Yes, they help us and they hold us back.
Yeah.
See, what happens is the same beliefs that made it successful can make it hard for us to change at the same time. That's why in my job, I have a unique job. I work with very successful people, successful leaders, and my whole mission is helping successful leaders achieve positive long-term change in behavior. That's what's really unique about what I've done over the years is historically coaching was sort of fixing losers or people with problems or people have something wrong with them. Well, the people that I coach are not losers. They're fantastic, successful people, and they're still trying to get better. So I talk about the challenges that come in life with success.
Where does ego fit into all this?
Well, ego is a huge deal. One of the biggest problems of everyone I've ever coached is I call winning too much. Now, what's that mean? If it's important, we want to win. If it's meaningful, we want to win. If it's critical, we want to win. If it's trivial, we want to win. If it's not worth it, we want to win anyway. Winners love winning, and it can be very hard for successful people not to constantly win. A simple case study, you want to go to dinner at restaurant X, your wife wants to go to dinner at restaurant Y. You have a heated argument. You go to restaurant Y, it was not your choice. The food tastes awful and the service is terrible. Option A, you can critique the food, point out your wife was wrong. This mistake could have been avoided if only you'd listened to me. Option B, you can shut up. Eat the stupid food, try to enjoy it, and have a nice evening. What would I do? What should I do? Almost all my clients, what would I do? Critique the food. What should I do? Shut up. It's very hard for our egos not to get in the way and cause us to do dumb things. Over and over, trying to prove we're smart, over and over, trying to prove we're right. And one of my great clients taught me this. He said, for the great individual achiever, it's all about me. For the great leader, it's all about them. Well, as an achiever, you need to be smart and you need to prove you're right. When you become a leader, especially a high-level leader, you need to let go of that nonsense. You need to help other people be smart. You need to help them be right. And this is, as you mentioned, one of the biggest challenges as we become more successful in life. Letting go of that egotistical need to prove we're smart, prove we're right, getting over that horrific fear of looking stupid, and realize I'm not here to prove I'm smart anymore. I'm here to help everyone else be smart.
So this overbearing ego almost sounds like a character flaw. So when we talk about character, what do we mean? What are the components of character and how do we build it?
Well, I'm not a great believer in the concept of fixed personality. A lot of us believe that's just the way I am. To me, that's one of the worst ways to think, because if people couldn't change, I'd never get paid. In my coaching, I don't get paid if my clients don't get better. Better is not judged by me or them, it's judged by everyone around them. People can change. As long as you think, though, that's just the way I am, you can't change. So I don't see that as a, quote, character flaw. It's just a bad habit. And like any other bad habit, it's a habit we've acquired over the years. We're not born with it. And it's a habit we can change.
Well, I think a lot of people can suffer from self-doubt. they can build up the ego, and then when they get past a certain level, the sort of the self-doubt can kick in. There used to be an old school of rule with the iron fist and shout and scream and get your staff to do things. But over the 40 years that this is now is changing, that people now are starting to lead from the front instead of the back.
Oh, it's a totally changed. I'm writing a new book on the history of leadership. I mean, people that say leaders are more aggressive today than ever before and pushy have never read a history book. I don't know if you know this. We used to have something called kings, and if you disagreed with them, they would chop your head off. We used to have slaves. We used to have sweatshops. So if people talk about leaders today as if they're pushy or aggressive, they've probably not read too many history books. If you look at the history of the world, leaders are almost all men. In the cave, they ruled by strength. The kings and queens ruled by dictate. They were allegedly having royal or loyal blood from God. Then, the rulers, the priests talked to God. The professors were always right. The master knew more than the apprentice. In the old days, there was one assumption of all leadership. Leader was superior to the people being led. Today, that assumption is increasingly invalid. Peter Drucker taught me this. Today's leaders manage knowledge workers. We manage people who know more than we do about what they're doing. We're not somehow superior or better than these people. Well, when you manage knowledge workers, you can't just tell them what to do and how to do it and yell at them. You have to ask, listen, and learn. If you knew more than me, if you know more than me, you can tell me what to do and how to do it. That's fine. If I know more than you and you tell me what to do and how to do it, that's completely dysfunctional.
Marshall, I think I read, talking about leaders like this, you were writing about Alan Mullally, who I believe you work with at the Ford Motor Company.
Alan is a great friend of mine. I was his coach, and he's been my friend for many, many years.
And he is a leader of this type, a person who's not afraid to say to his people that he doesn't know the solution. Is that true? And what kind of a guy is he, and how does he work?
Well, number one, he's not a good leader. He's a spectacular leader, an amazing leader. He went to Ford. The stock was valued at $1.01. He left. It was $18.40. And he had a 97% approval rating from every employee in a union company, which is mind-blowing. This is the UAW, 97% approval rating for a CEO. Mind-blowing. He's an amazing guy and just a wonderful person. He goes to Ford. And he says to everybody, let's establish our priorities, red, yellow, green. Now, and we're going to do red, yellow, green for each of our top 5 priorities. Green is I'm on plan. Yellow is I'm not on plan, have a strategy to get there. And red, I'm not on plan, I have no strategy. The first meeting, red, yellow, green, the company's losing $17 billion, with a B, $billion. 16 people, 5 priorities each, 80 priorities, everything is green. Everybody says they're on plan. So Alan says, well, you know what? We're all on plan and we're losing $17 billion. I guess our plan must be to lose at least $17 billion because we're right there. Maybe we should do it again. Finally, somebody says red. Alan stands up and applauds and he says, thank you for having the courage to say red. He said, you're not on plan. You don't know how to get there. It's okay. It's okay. And he said, I'm the CEO of the Ford Motor Company. I want to assure you of one thing. I know a whole lot less than you do, and that's okay too. Why don't we just get together and find someone who knows what they're doing and go solve the problem? Within 10 minutes, the problem was solved. Not by anyone in that room, by people 2 or 3 levels below the people in that room. Once they got over, as you said, their ego and their need to prove they're smart and realize nobody in this room can solve the problem, it's okay. Let's just find someone who knows what they're doing. There's a lot of smart engineers here. The problem got solved.
But that's the thing, isn't it? That some people, they're frightened to ask for help. They think they can do it all on their own, and there's many people who are working on many different levels in an industry and in a business that have the answers to solve the questions.
And it's just great to be honest with people.
Yeah.
3 words that I found really helped my life: not an expert. Not an expert. I'm often asked questions, and my answer is not an expert.
Don't know.
I'm not an expert on everything and don't have to be, and it's okay. And I think you don't have less credibility when you say that. I believe you have more credibility. Because then when you do express an opinion, you probably at least think you know what you're talking about.
Yes, fun.
I guess one of the things that affects us all, maybe some more than others, and depending on our level of self-mastery and expertise, is that we often get caught in a guilt, shame and fear kind of triad, an unholy alliance. Maybe we're too fearful to try something, or too ashamed to say that we don't know, or too guilty to enjoy our success. Why do people do that to themselves, and how can they stop it?
Well, again, I'm a Buddhist, so Buddhists are really, I'm not a religious, but a philosophical Buddhist. Buddhism, a lot of Buddhism is getting rid of guilt and learning to accept what is and accept, who you are. So I think a couple of points. One is to learn to accept what is. Can you change it or not? If you can change it, fine. You do your best to change it. If you can't change it, just take a deep breath and let it go. In my book, Triggers, I have a great question to ask yourself before you do anything. Am I willing at this time to make the investment required to make a positive difference on this topic? If the answer is yes, go for it. If the answer is no, take a deep breath and let it go. There's nothing you're going to do about it anyway. Beating yourself over the head and trying to make yourself feel guilty or feeling bad, it's a total waste of time. The other thing is, don't waste your time if you're not going to make a difference. Just put your time and energy in life where you can make a difference. As I've grown older, my level of aspiration in life has gone down and down and down. My level of impact has gone up and up and up. Why? I quit worrying about what I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to change it. Don't waste time.
Do you think if someone has difficulty in trying to find the answer is, sort of stepping out of the business and finding that place where they can quiet their mind and see if they can find the answer themselves?
Maybe. See, the typical coach reaction is, if I ask you enough questions, you're going to find the answer. I'm very dubious about that. I think the best thing is ask people around you. Learn from everyone around you. Learn from as many people as you can. Learn from your key stakeholders. That's, to me, the best way to start finding the answers. Sometimes, if the answer is inside you, if you ask yourself enough questions, you might find the answer in a reflective process.
What's your yardstick for seeing that your clients are improving? Is it lifestyle?
It's positive, measurable change in the most important behaviors judged by the most important people over a time period of a year to a year and a half.
Tell me this, in your book, How Women Rise and Break the 12 Habits of Holding Them Back, what inspired you to get involved in that book?
Well, like most of my life, it seems to be luck is a key variable. I wish I could take credit for most of the good things that have happened to me. In most cases, it just seems to be pure dumb luck. An acquaintance of ours, Sally Helgeson, Mike Dulworth, sent us an email. And the email tagline said, "Crazy idea." He said, "Marshall, you wrote this book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And it's a great book. Most of the issues are issues that men have more than women. And why don't you work with Sally, who's an expert on women in leadership, and you two to get together and write a book that's really applying that same concept only to issues more specifically related to women?
What's the one big takeaway from it?
If I had to pick one, the average woman is seen as a better leader than the average man in 360-degree feedback. The average woman has one issue consistently and amazingly more than the average man. That's the desire to be the perfect everything to everyone. Women are too hard on themselves. You mentioned guilt. Way too much guilt, way too much self-doubt, way too much beating themselves up. And the opposite side of that is they don't promote themselves in a positive way enough. Men overrate themselves, women underrate themselves. So the one coaching I have for women far more than men is, please do not be too hard on yourself. Please do not be too hard on yourself. No. Now, you guys are both men, so there's two learnings in this for us men. Are you ready for men's learnings?
I'm listening. Perhaps
men, there are learnings for us. The two learnings are, number one, men, there's bad news in all this research. The bad news is, according to these research studies involving thousands of people as leaders, we're not as good. But men, there's good news. You know what the good news is? We don't care. We're not as good, but we don't care.
One of the things we see, perhaps a derivative of fear, with people who are already successful, is a scarcity mentality where they're overly mean and thrifty with themselves and with their families and with others. So why do you think a generosity of spirit is so important for personal fulfillment?
Well, I think it's important for a couple of reasons. One, it makes you have a happier life. You just feel better about yourself and about life. And two, recognition of others is highly correlated with all kinds of positive things, such as productivity, such as motivation, such as engagement. So it's really good to recognize others for two reasons. One, it makes you feel better, and two, it's good for them. It's very hard to do. It's funny, we were talking about this. One of the world's experts on recognition is Chester Elton. And Chester and I are writing a new book on recognition together. So I was just talking about this topic an hour ago. And we talked about why is it so hard for many people to give recognition? And, you know, it's a lot of reasons. One of them is I think we're deep down inside afraid of rejection. Paul Simon had some great lines. He said, "Some people never say the words, 'I love you.' It's not their style to be so bold. Some people never say the words, 'I love you.' But like a child, they're longing to be told." Well, there's a lot of truth to that, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of us want people to say that they love us, but we don't want to say we love them.
It's true. It's true.
It's hard. By the way, have you ever had, any of you guys, either one of you guys had this experience before? You ever look at some woman and say, "I love you"? And she says, "You know, I like you too, and I'd like to be your friend someday."
Yeah,
It's hard to take.
you remind me of my early 20s.
I think we've all been down that bad road.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you know,
It was a
it's
life
kind of
of
hard.
rejection.
It's kind of hard because when we say something good to somebody, we want to hear something good back, and if we don't, we just tend to feel awful.
But there's the other thing. A lot of people in business, they'll get so many compliments on a regular basis, and then someone will say something negative, and they'll remember the negative thing, but they won't remember all the positive things that they've been told.
Exactly right. And one of the greatest fears you have in business is people say too many positive things. I mean, everyone sucks up. Mike Duke was CEO of Walmart. He's a hilarious guy, and he retired, and he was at my house, and I do this program for old guys who are retiring, right? And he said, "You know, when I was CEO of Walmart, I had this joke I told." He said, "It was a funny joke, and everybody always laughed, and a clean joke. I love my little joke." Then he said, "You know, I retired as CEO, and I was in this group, and I told the joke." And he said, nobody laughed. Then he said, I thought maybe they're grumpy. I was in another group. I told a joke again. He said, nobody laughed. He said, finally, my wife looked at me and said, "Mike, you fool, did you actually think that joke was funny?" They're only laughing because you're CEO of Walmart, you idiot.
I have a question for you, Marshall, that's maybe a little bit more technical. I know you spend a lot of time with CEOs of top corporations, and even though the economies are growing now in the US and in Europe, and unemployment is very low, I get a sense among people, a sense of foreboding that automation and artificial intelligence in short order will render huge swathes of people obsolete and surplus to requirements. So from your experience and contact with these people, what's your view of the future of work and the role of automation and artificial intelligence in the future?
Well, you know, is it a nightmare or a dream come true? And I think my answer is both. In some ways, it's a dream come true. In some ways, it's a nightmare. And, you know, you can't have it both ways. And these things are real. Artificial intelligence is coming. Robotics is coming. 3D manufacturing is coming. I mean, you know, people complaining because we're sending all those jobs to China. Those jobs aren't going to be sent to China anymore. They're all coming back to the States. Why? A robot in the State can do it the same as a robot in China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, it's the new world is coming. And like any transition, the industrial revolution, the leaving agriculture, all that, it produces trauma. And this revolution won't be any different.
It's like in one of my earlier podcasts, we were speaking to Daniel Presley. Daniel is one of the world's leading marketing experts, and he was even saying that what's going to happen even in marketing because of artificial intelligence, you haven't seen nothing yet. And even with Google, we were sort of saying with Google being 10-year-old, but the internet's been there a lot longer. And
right. No, I totally agree. And huge changes.
You mentioned about traveling all over the world, and I believe that you've been to over 90 countries at this stage.
102.
102, okay. So what are some of the one or two or maybe three of your favourite places that you've seen in your travels?
Well, mine is not so much where, but where and when. Being in Berlin after the wall went down, being in Prague when they were no longer communists, being in Africa when they had the Great Famine, being in the Ukraine when they had the Orange Revolution. It really feels like you're being in Russia between Gorbachev and Yeltsin. It really feels like you're part of history. So it's not just where you are, it's where you are at a point in time that is probably not going to be replicated.
If someone was to start reading your books, which would you recommend for them to read to start off to get involved in your literature?
What got you here won't get you there.
Okay. And on that, what other book apart from your own would you recommend for some people to read?
One of my favorite books is called Old Path, White Clouds, published by Thich Nhat Hanh, Thichnhathanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. Old Path, White Clouds. I love that book.
Okay, we'll put that one in. Are the best business advice you've ever received?
You need to do two things simultaneously. One, do what you love doing, do what makes you happy, and at the same time, do what you feel is meaningful for you, that produces results that you think matter, happiness and meaning, and you need both. If you try to achieve happiness without meaning, your life is empty and you're just amusing yourself to death. Yeah. If you try to achieve meaning without happiness, you're bitter, you're a martyr. Neither one's any good. You need to have simultaneous happiness and meaning in life, and to the degree you can do that, you win.
And where can people locate your business if they want to get in touch or buy a book? Where can they locate it or get it online?
Well, you can go to Amazon and get pretty much all my books. And also, if you go to my website, I give everything away. I've got over 200 videos, articles, everything on my website, www.marshallgoldsmith.com. Marshall has 2 L's. If you're a LinkedIn, I have over 1.2 million followers on LinkedIn. So I give all my videos away on LinkedIn. I have new articles every week. All kinds of stuff. So again, I'm a Buddhist. I give everything away. My basic attitude is we're all going to be equally dead here. Let's do some good.
When did you become a Buddhist?
40 years ago.
Interesting.
Long time
on it. What song would you like us to play out with, Marshall?
Somewhere over the rainbow. Way up high.
Definitely, we'll give that to the engineer. Marshall Goldsmith, thanks for taking the time and speaking to myself, Joseph Dalton, and Patrick Daly on Breakthrough Brands.
Thank you very much. Had a wonderful time.
Thank you, Marshall.
Take care. God bless. Take care.
Keep well.
Thank you.
Over the years, I've had the pleasure to interview hundreds of people on my business shows, Breakthrough Brands and Business Eye. In doing so, I've put together my top 10 tips that I've picked up from my guests along the way. To discover what these are and how they may benefit you in your business, please click on the link below or go to joedalton.ie/discover.